So hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Brittany Martin, and I am the founder and CEO of Doctoral Mom Incorporated. Doctoral Mom Incorporated is now a nonprofit organization. Our plan is to actually issue scholarships and provide more resources to mothers in doctorate programs. We now have about 2,100 members in our group, and growth has been very rapid. We've only been around for about a year and a half. So we're anticipating that we'll probably hit that 3,000 mark by the end of the year. So there's going to be a number of benefits that come with being a part of the Doctoral Mom group, and we can't wait to continue to share that information with you, with all of you. So I'm curious in the chat, just to kind of test it out, I'm hoping that it's activated for you guys. If you could just let us know how you heard about the webinar, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, whether or not you got an email, that'd be great to know so that we can continue to market that way to you. But now I want to shift gears and introduce you to Dr. John Palmer. He is one of my mentors. I consider him a mentor. He actually was a part of my dissertation committee. So he was one of the first people to call me Dr. Martin. So it is such a pleasure to be able to have him here with us and to walk us through dissertations because this is somebody I greatly admire. So I'll just give you like a quick background on him. He's a faculty member within the Global Leadership and Management Department and is the director of the College of Business Administration Executive Education Program at the University of Missouri in St. Louis. I'm going to let him kind of take over from here and continue to introduce himself. But thank you so much, Dr. Palmer, for taking time out to be with us tonight.
Oh, thank you. And I apologize for my camera. I'm not sure. I kind of look, at least I look blurry to myself here. I don't know if I do to everyone else. But and you may hear an occasional dog barking in the background. I apologize for that too. I think my dog is trained. My dog will be quiet all day long, and as soon as my Zoom meetings start, she'll start barking again. So that's kind of the routine. But it's my pleasure to be here. And as Dr. Martin indicated, I worked with her extensively at Argosy University in Chicago. Prior to that, I started my career out at the University of Kentucky. That's where I earned my PhD and did my own dissertation work. And after that, I spent most of my career at the University of Illinois at Springfield. So I'm really happy to be here. And I'm really impressed with all that I've heard about this group and the scope of it and the impact of it. The number of people that is being reached by this particular venue is phenomenal. So I give Dr. Martin a lot of credit for that, as well as you for being here tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and bring up a kind of a little PowerPoint presentation. It's about 12 or 15 slides. And so what I'll do is I'll go through that, and you have some options here of either asking questions on the chat room side of things, or else wait until the end. And I want to have a general Q&A session with everyone. So I guess I'll go ahead and get started, and I'm going to try and get this presentation up. There. Should be able to see that. And let me get my glasses on. Whoops. Start over again. Okay, so the topic of that I'd like to talk to you about tonight, and this is essentially based on a combination of my acquired, I guess, experience and wisdom as a doctoral student and going through the dissertation process, as well as working with hundreds of different students in various stages of their dissertation, being on dissertation committees. I've kind of have the opportunity to see things from both sides. So I think that this will be beneficial to you with respect to organizing for your dissertation and thinking about your topic if you don't have a topic already and that sort of thing. And most of the challenges that I want to talk about here are based on challenges that I had myself. and things that I learned when I went through the process. And so hopefully by talking a little bit about some of these challenges, you can avoid some of the mistakes that I made and other people made along the way too. So we're going to be talking about selecting a topic, about challenges, and then of course about managing essential tasks. And I will say on the front end of things that about 80% of your ability to be successful and stay on track with your dissertation has to do with organization. That's the most important thing. So I just want to say that on the outset, and we'll talk more about that as we move forward here. So some of the key assumptions at the outset that are important to recognize is, first off, the main purpose of writing a dissertation is for you to learn how to do research. And research is one of those things, it's kind of like riding a bike. You can read a book on how to ride a bike, but it's not the same as riding it. And in order to really become adept at riding a bike and get really good at it, you have to pretty much just jump on it and go. And it's really the same thing with a dissertation. And that's the purpose of the whole process. And I will say that when I started my process, I was a little timid, like I'm sure you are too, and in coming out of the gates with things, and a little confused every once in a while in going through the process. But the interesting thing about it is when I got on the other end of things, I realized that I had learned a lot. And at the time, it didn't really seem like it. It seemed like I was just trying to keep my head above water all the time. But after the whole thing was over with, it's like, wow, I know a little bit about research now. And so that's the main purpose behind it. And the reason why I bring this up is because, as I indicate in this second bullet point, your dissertation is unlikely to be a seminal piece of research. It's unlikely to be your best work. It's unlikely to be what we consider to be groundbreaking research that's out there on the frontiers of your field of study. You want to save that audacious goal for later in your career, when you get out there and you get your feet wet. However, it does need to be very good and make a unique contribution to your field. But I'm saying this because chances are it's going to make a modest contribution to your field. And I've seen a lot of students that really want to get engaged in groundbreaking research with their dissertation and do something fundamentally different than anybody's ever done before. And I can tell you with pretty much 100% certainty that this isn't the time to do that. This is the time to bite off something that you can chew. And again, it can be the start of something bigger that you do later on, but it's unlikely to be a game changer in your field. Okay. But at the same time, I don't want to underestimate the importance of making sure that you have a passion for your topic. You're going to be living with this topic for a period of time, for probably a couple of years in this process. And so it really does need to be something that you're fundamentally interested in. So what you should never do is just select a topic that, well, this looks like something easy to do, so maybe I'll do this. Or there's a lot of jobs out there in such and such, and so I want the focus of my dissertation to be on that, even though I don't really care about that particular area of study. You do want it to be something that you do have a passion for in some way. So those are some of the key assumptions. Here's something that's really important. And before you begin to identify potential committee members, you want to do these things. First off, you want to research a topic of interest in detail. Then you go to your potential committee members with a pretty good idea of what you want to do. Now, you're unlikely to have things nailed down 100%, but at the same time, you want to be moving in the direction of something that is manageable and something that in concise terms you can describe. So I've had students come to me, and I'm just going to throw something out here hypothetically. I've had students come to me and say, okay, well, I'm interested in doing my research on motivation. So my response to that would be, well, that's not really a research topic. Motivation is such a broad-based concept, and it encompasses so many different things. Uh, what type of motivation are you interested in and why? And so what you might do in narrowing down a topic is think a little bit about motivation. Well, yeah, I'm interested in motivation, but what type of motivation am I really interested in? Why am I interested in that topic? Well, maybe you're interested in it because um, you want to try and understand why people are motivated to start their own business. So, okay, well, now you're going somewhere with it. So there is a stream of research out there. You'll go out there and start doing your research. And well, there's something called entrepreneurial intentions. And there is a body of research out there that focuses on identifying factors that contribute to entrepreneurial intentions. And that may involve a number of different things. Obviously, self-efficacy is probably one of them. And the type of education that people have had, background or experiences, exposure to other individuals who run businesses and that sort of thing. And so now you're starting to go somewhere and you're starting to familiarize yourself with the topical area. And maybe you decide that in going out and looking at this other research, that, well, one thing I've noticed here that keeps coming up again and again, a recurring topic these days, there are more females than males that are starting new business ventures. And so maybe something that would be really interesting to look at and something that's interesting to me as an individual might be to try and see if there are variations based on gender that in terms of motivations people have for starting a business. So in other words, do females have a tendency to want to start businesses for the same reason that males do, for example? So all at once you have a topic. All at once you're looking at the moderating influences of gender on entrepreneurial intentions. So that's the direction that you want to go in with this. And you never want to go to your committee members on the front end of things without at least having a decent idea of what you want to do. And the best way to make that happen on the front end is to get out there on the initial side of things and begin to take a look at other dissertations and begin to really kind of dive into that stream of literature that you're interested in on the front end. So that's really important. In addition to that, there's the doability factor. Realize that you're going into this thing with limited time. You're probably going into this with limited funds to fund the research. And also, in addition to that, you want to make sure that whatever it is, the information that you need to collect, the information that you need to acquire to make this happen is out there, that the data is out there in some form. You want to be very realistic about that. If it's going to involve you going out and finding, for example, 500 people in a particular profession, 500 medical doctors to interview or something like that, it's probably not going to happen. Maybe later on you'll have the resources to do something like that. But right now, that's just, it's not going to happen. It'll take you years and years to do that. Not only to identify who these individuals are, but to arrange for appointments to set up with them, to do the interviewing and everything else. The same thing applies if you're doing some type of survey research and you expect to send a survey out to 10,000 individuals. You may only get a response rate of 5, 6, 7% with something like that. And so you have to realize the cost, both in time and money, that it's going to take to do that. So be practical with this thing too. You've only got so much time to do this. And finally, relevance. So make sure that your proposed research builds on an existing body of knowledge, as I just indicated, the example that I just put out there. And you want to do all this on the front end, and this may take you a couple of months or a few months to kind of nail things down to this level. But then at that point is when you want to actually go to your committee, approach your committee, and demonstrate to them that you've done your homework and that you're serious about wanting to move forward with your research. That's really, really, really important. So I've also identified some of the mistakes, I guess, the biggest mistakes that you want to avoid with your dissertation research. And one of the ones, as I just indicated with our example with motivation as a topic, you want to do something with motivation. being too broad with your research idea. You want to make sure that you have something narrowed down that's manageable, something that you can bite off and chew and do something with. So that's important. Also, proposing to do something that you don't know how to do. I've seen this a lot in dissertation proposals where people want to utilize some type of phenomenological research approach or some elaborate data analysis approach or whatever the case may be. And if it's not something that you've been trained to do in your coursework, in your qualitative research methods course or your quantitative research methods course or whatever, uh, it's going to be very, very difficult for you to get up to speed on that on your own. And even if you work with a methodologist, you still need to understand what's going on. So you want to make sure that it's something that you're not going to spend the next 3 years trying to learn how to do the analysis. So that's really important. Also, when you're doing your dissertation, it's important that you stay focused on something that's actually inside of your field. So uh, I've seen a lot of times that people are majoring in let's say marketing or something like that, business marketing, and they're like, well, but I've got this other interest out here that's more in the area of leadership and management. And that's not a direction that you want to go in. It needs to be something that's a contribution to your specific field. So that's really important, because not only would that be problematic for your committee, but in addition to that, when you go out there and you start interviewing for positions, particularly if they're academic positions, they want to see that you've done some research within your field of study. So you want to establish those parameters around things, not to tie your hands or anything like that, but just for your own future marketability. I guess it's important that you stay inside of your field with something. And also, as I indicated on the very front end of things here, another big mistake to avoid is proposing an entirely new research topic that you feel has never before been explored, and trying to really break ground from square one with it. That's when I always tell people that, save that one for after you have your degree and first job. And then you can go back and you can do whatever you want to do. But once again, if you're breaking fresh ground with something fundamentally new, which is very difficult to do anyway, because you'd be surprised how many things out there have already been analyzed over the years, how many millions of different concepts and constructs and what have you that have been researched extensively. But you want to, again, it needs to be manageable, and anything that's entirely new, exploratory, you're not in a position yet, frankly, to do that. Resource-wise, you're not in a position to do it, and also you don't have the research background to do that yet. So these are just some of the mistakes that you want to try and avoid. A few others: setting unrealistic timelines. Realize that I'm sure most of you have very, very busy schedules. Realize that life goes on while you go on and try and complete your dissertation. And you need to factor all of that in addition to what you're already doing right now with work responsibilities, with family responsibilities, with other types of activities and things you have going on in your life, that you're going to be doing this on top of that. And most of those other obligations aren't going to just go away. You may get some relief on a few things along the way, but maybe you can kind of take off work a little bit to try and finish up your dissertation and things like that. But for the most part, life goes on, and life still has its challenges. So you don't want to set unrealistic timelines. I've had people come to me and say things like, well, I want to finish this up in 6 months. And it's just, it won't happen. The average time for completion of dissertation, at least in my field, is along the lines of 2 years, possibly a little less than that, but that would be a realistic timeline, at least in my field of study. If somebody came to me and said, I want to finish in a year, I'd tell them that it's probably not possible. Give it your best shot, but it probably won't happen. 18 months maybe, but the average time is more like 2 years. Another big one has to do with not being objective about your topic. Okay. So, as I indicated previously, it's important to be passionate about your idea, your topic. You're going to be living with this for a while, and you need to be excited about it. You need to have that sustained energy that goes along with that, which is very difficult to do if it's not something that you like. But at the same time, there are situations where people can be a little bit too attached to the topic. And for whatever reason, if it's about something that you had a bad experience with, for example, whatever that may be, you've got kind of an emotional element to the way that you view that topic. And if you want to analyze something like that, you need to set your own personal feelings aside, because the idea behind this research, the idea behind a dissertation, is to do objective research. So sometimes I would say it is possible for people to be too close to the topic that they want to study. So you need to do some self-reflection if you feel that maybe you kind of fit into that category, I guess, or whatever, of, well, am I really being objective about this, or uh, am I letting my own personal experiences guide the way I view things? So that's really, really important. And then finally, another mistake to avoid is trying to prove something. I'm trying to prove X, Y, and Z. You're not really going to prove anything with your dissertation. You can provide evidence that something exists or something doesn't exist, or two things are related to one another, or whatever the case may be. But you're not setting out to prove anything, and you won't prove anything beyond the context of your research. It's not going to be generalizable to the whole world. So you want to get out of that mindset as well. So just a little more about narrowing down your topic and moving forward with things. The best place to start when you're trying to nail down a topic, the best place to start is to say, what do I want? What's my end game? What do I want on the other end? So I always tell students to do this. Start at the end, the last chapter of your dissertation, possibly even do hypothetical write-up of some kind of what you want to be able to say on the other end, and maybe have a couple of different versions. You kind of hypothesize that the world works a certain way, and your research may or may not support that. So I would do two write-ups. I would do one write-up based on findings that confirm what it is you're testing, and I would do a second write-up that may involve um, your research findings not confirming what you set out to confirm. And by doing that, by going to the end, it gives you a better perspective on what your end game is. Because the last thing that you want to do, and this kind of goes back to the organization and planning of things, the last thing you want to do is jump into something on the front end and not know where you're going, if that makes any sense. So this is really, really important to identify your end game on the front end. Just like you would if you're setting out to travel somewhere, you know where your destination is before you leave. Sometimes you do, mostly you do. And so that's where you want to be with the dissertation. And this is really something, probably the best advice I can give you is start with your end game. And also, along with this, you want to be able to describe the relevance of your potential results. So you're writing depending upon how it's structured within your institution, a lot of dissertations are 5 chapters. You start out with an introductory chapter, introducing the concepts and everything. And then chapter 2 is like a literature review. In chapter 3, you describe your methodology. Chapter 4 is your results. And then chapter 5 is your conclusion. And so if your dissertation is structured that way in your institution, then this would be a hypothetical write-up of chapter number 5. Okay. See, I don't see any. See if I see any chat questions yet. I don't yet. Okay. All
Hey,
right.
I saw one earlier. I'm gonna catch a couple that came in.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe I'm not viewing, I don't see it on the side here. Okay. I
Oh,
apologize for that.
that's okay. I'll jump in. I'll ask you the questions if that's okay as they
Oh,
kind of come
sure,
in.
sure.
So earlier, someone asked, how much time should you put aside per week for your dissertation?
That's a really great question. And if I had to lay something out there, if you're trying to finish, if your objective is to finish in say 18 to 24 months total from the time that you initiate the process on the front end, I would say roughly about 20 hours a week would be the average. Um, there are going to be some parts of the dissertation, some parts of the process that's going to involve you more time on your part, more of a time commitment on your part. There'll be other weeks where maybe you do have a little more slack, and you're going to need a break once in a while too. But I would say on average about 20 hours a week.
And then we had a different question earlier. I think it was a little bit more specific towards topic. I'm gonna rephrase the question a bit.
Okay, all right.
But if your topic is too broad, do you recommend that the person goes directly to their chair, or should they seek out other individuals at their institution too?
I would seek out as much information as possible from various sources. Depending upon how broad it is, if it's very broad, I wouldn't try to work with your committee yet. At that point, I would seek out some other individuals. And the other thing that I would do is I would go in and I would really delve into the literature on that topic and get a feel for a potential direction to go with your topic that's more specific. I think that with dissertation committees, and of course it depends. If you're in a smaller institution and you've already worked with your dissertation committee in other capacities, like for example, if they've also been your instructors and you actually know these individuals fairly well, then you may want to approach them and say, I'm a little stuck here. I could really use some advice. But if you're going to people that you've never worked with before, first impressions mean a lot. And you want to be able to go to them with something fairly specific where they say, wow, this is going to be interesting. I really look forward to working with this individual. Uh, she knows where she wants to go with things.
And just because of our group consists of mothers, do you have any advice for like specific advice for parents, like what they should do with respect to someone who may not have any children?
Could you say the last part of that again, Brittany?
I was just saying, what do you think parents should do, like maybe a little bit differently with respect to kind of organizing everything? And I'm sure for me it was a lot different, I think, than my peers. Do you have any advice for specifically for parents?
Yes, and actually, I on one of the screens I talk a little bit about this. I just touch on it, but that's a really good question. I think that what you need to do is you need to sit down and identify your, I guess we'll call it support system that you have in terms of family members and friends and spouses, older children, whatever the case may be. And I think you need to sit down with them and really lay out a plan. And that plan needs to include, of course, you still having adequate time to spend with your children as well. But I do think that it's important to sit everybody down and get everybody to understand how much time you need to put into this and understand what roles and responsibilities they may have. So that's really important. And if you don't really have a support system like that, then it becomes a little trickier. But you're still going to need to figure out a way somehow to have some dedicated time every week to spend to your dissertation. And unfortunately, that dedicated time may be from midnight until 4 o'clock in the morning while they're sleeping. But I think it's really important on the front end, getting back to the realistic aspect of things. If you are in that situation, then you need to be realistic about it. Otherwise, if you're not realistic about it, you're just going to get frustrated. Other questions at this point? I'm not seeing my chat up here. I'm doing something wrong. I apologize for that. But
Oh, it's okay. Do you see, if you scroll to the bottom of your screen, do you see the icons pop up?
no, I've got it at the top, and that's what
Oh,
I'm
okay.
looking for. So I'm not seeing the chat for some reason. It's not popping up. It's not lighting up like it normally does.
That's
So
okay.
I'll
I'll
stop. I'll stop in a couple more slides. I'll stop again and answer any questions. Will that work?
yeah, that's perfect.
Okay, great, great. Okay, so now that you've done your preliminary homework and you do have a topic in mind, you're ready to go to your committee members at this point. And it's really important, first off, to approach faculty members that you feel may have a mutual interest in your topic. What you really don't want to do is say, I want so-and-so for my committee chair because that individual is a nice person. That's not really not, and it's great. It's great that you're working with that individual and that you have a great relationship with that individual, but you really want to find somebody who actually has a mutual interest in your topic, okay, whomever that may be, and make sure that you have faculty members that are on board and also that are knowledgeable about the topic too. I mean, there are a lot of faculty members out there that are very, very student oriented and they're great people, but they may not be your best research for, or your best resource for the topic. So make sure that it is someone who has a mutual interest in your topic. That's really important. And the other thing too is to make sure that there's some mutually agreed upon timelines for various tasks. One of the best things to do on the front end of things and to take to your dissertation committee members during the initial meeting or shortly thereafter is a rough sketch of a critical path chart that lays out tasks and timelines that you developed. And you go to your committee members, you show them what it looks like. Well, I want to be here by March. I want to be here by July. I want to be here by next January and so on. And run that by them. It does two things. First off, it shows them that you're serious about finishing this. You're serious about completion. You're not just out there floating around. That's really important. But it also, going back to first impressions mean a lot. It shows them that you have your act together. And that's really important too. Now, what you may have to do, and you may have to do this a few times, is go back to your committee and make some adjustments to those timelines. You could be moving along just fine, and all at once you get to your IRB, and you get held up there for a few months. Those sorts of things do happen, and they happen quite frequently, actually. But you can't get frustrated with that. You have to keep moving on, work on other things while IRB is reviewing your application, and make those adjustments to your chart, to your timelines, and get the buy-in again from your committee members. So that's really important to have that laid out. It's about structure. A lot of it's about structure here. Also, be sure that you have at least one faculty member that's well-versed on the methodology that you plan to use. So again, you need to be realistic about the methodology that you use, but also keep in mind that you may have only had one or two or three courses dealing with methodology in general, and now you're trying to apply it to a specific situation, and you need someone who's really good at that. One caveat here: a methodologist isn't just somebody who can run a computer program for you. A methodologist is someone who really understands the underlying methodology and the assumptions and how you can use that to test the information you need to in order to put your research together. So that's what a methodologist is. And it can either be a qualitative methodologist or it can be a quantitative methodologist. One thing where a lot of people make a mistake is they'll decide they want to go with a qualitative methodology not because so much it's the most appropriate thing to use, but they're uncomfortable with the quantitative side of things. Okay. And there is kind of a fear of that quantitative side of things. But I'll tell you that the qualitative methodology is probably more difficult to understand than the quantitative side of things. So not everyone is a whiz with the quantitative side of things, but if you do decide to go that route on the quantitative side and you're uncomfortable, there are plenty of people out there that can help you, methodologists. And you want to try and get that individual on board early on in your process and get those individuals on your committee so you can begin to work with them from day one. And the important thing about doing that is you know that it's doable. You're working with your methodologist on it. Your methodologist knows what kind of information you're collecting, either quantitative or qualitative. And at that point, when you get that nod from that methodologist, you know it's something that's doable. And that's really important. And the bottom one here, and this is extremely important. Unlike other classes that you've taken as an undergraduate student, as a graduate student, what have you, this is your show and yours to manage. Your committee is not going to sit there and tell you do this, do that, do A, do B, do C. This is your show to manage. And if you fall off the edge somewhere, it's going to be your job to pretty much get back on your own. It really, in that regard, it really is kind of a sink or swim thing in some ways, but you want to keep swimming. And the last thing you want to do is fall off the edge a little bit and not keep your committee members informed about what's going on. Because after a while, your committee members will be like, well, I haven't seen so-and-so in a while. I wonder whatever happened to them, type thing. That's not where you want to be. That's not how you get your committee members engaged and get their full-fledged buy-in. You want to stay in continual communication with your committee members, I would say at least once a week. And of course, there really aren't any summer breaks with this or anything else, but short of a few minor breaks along the way during the year, this is a 12-month-a-year endeavor. It's not something that you can decide, well, I'll just take the summer off and come back and hit it hard again in the fall. This is something that you really need to keep moving with. It's kind of like a slow-moving train. Do you have any other questions at this point?
Yeah, we got a really great question in from Lindsay. Do most people begin the dissertation planning process during or after coursework? I understand that formal components like defending a proposal will not occur until after coursework, but when do folks start the specifics of determining what type of study to choose?
I would say when you get into the last semester or two, or last term or two of your coursework, that would be the time to really start thinking seriously about the direction you want to go in with things. I wouldn't wait until you're completely finished with your coursework before you do that. I realize that you have comprehensive exams as well. A lot of people do. And of course, that takes the focus off of it. But I would begin to really do some extensive work, I guess, research on the direction that I want to go with my dissertation at least 6 months prior to comp exams. And that gives you time to do quite a few things. For one thing, when you're still in your coursework, there could be something that you have right now in your courses that can jump out at you if you're in the right mindset. And so it could be right there. Once you get away from it for a little while, it's hard to get back into those topics again. So that's a kind of a compelling reason right there to start a little early with this, because you're still knee deep in maybe ears deep in the coursework, and it's a great time to be thinking about different topical areas.
All right.
Anything else?
That's what we have for now.
All right, I apologize. It's just that the chat's not popping up here. I'm not sure why not. Excuse me. Okay, so as I indicated previously, prior to what I call the launch, when you do sit down with your committee and you start actually moving forward with the dissertation process itself, do a realistic assessment of how much time you can put into the dissertation each week, And when during the week this will occur, as we noted previously, and share this information with your committee so you can develop that kind of critical path chart, I'll call it. You can, goes by a lot of different names, PERT charts, whatever. Again, and as we indicated, make sure that you have a support system in place of some kind. This is really important, and especially if you're involved in trying to raise a family, a young family, it's even more of a challenge, I know. Um, but there, hopefully, there's family members, there's employers, their friends, and I noted the older children here and so on, and to be able to get everybody on board to understand what you're going to be involved with here, the amount of time that you need, and what their roles and responsibilities are along the way. This is really important. And also make arrangements to secure an editor, okay? And a lot of times, and this is kind of one of my pet peeves, I guess, of working as on committees as a committee chair or as a member of a committee, is doctoral students submitting subpar submissions, subpar work. Okay. If you've got some challenges with writing, if you've got some challenges with structure of your reports, papers, and that sort of thing, secure the assistance of an editor on the front end of things. What you never want to do is you never want to submit substandard work of any kind to your committee. You want to stay in the good graces of your committee, and there's nothing more frustrating than having a doctoral level student submit something that's just not up to par, not even close to being up to par with regard to writing style and structure and that sort of thing. So make arrangements to secure an editor. If you have the financial resources, you can always, it's easy to secure an editor. If you don't have the financial resources, my guess is, at least in most institutions, every institution I've ever been at, there is free writing assistance labs and things like that. And you want to always make sure that you seek whatever assistance you need, and make sure that anything that goes to your committee is in good form. That's extremely important. Okay, so now you're moving down the road with your dissertation. And of course, it's very important to stay on your timeline. Do that to the greatest extent possible. And as I noted previously, in the event of unanticipated circumstances, you're going to need to revise your critical path chart immediately. Keep things moving forward. When you run into challenges, of course, there's all kinds of challenges you can run into. You can, anything from challenges at work to challenges with your health or a family member's health. There are endless ways, endless things that can come up. And everybody understands that. And everybody, or most people anyway, are reasonable when it comes to working with you on things like that. But you need to keep them apprised of what's going on. Also, something else that's kind of a pet peeve of people as committee members is when you ask them, well, what are you doing now? And the student will say, well, I'm waiting for so-and-so to get back to me to see if I can do some interviews. Or, I'm waiting to hear back from IRB. I did my submission and they want some additional information. You should always be doing something. There's always something else to do with your dissertation, and you should never be waiting for anybody. There's always something else to be done. You can be setting up your tables. You can be writing up part of your chapter 5. You can be working on your bibliography. You can go back and you can be revising your literature review and that sort of thing while you're waiting to get the approval from IRB to begin to collect your data or do your interviews or whatever you're going to do. So never go into park with this thing. Always be moving forward with an aspect of it. That's really important. Also, on a periodic basis, and this will happen, it happens to everybody, you're going to be dealing with rejection. IRB is going to say, no, you need to go back and do this or do that before we're going to approve it. You anticipate being able to interview certain individuals, and all at once you can't do it, maybe because of certain circumstances. So those are things that are normal and they're part of the process, but don't let it get you down. When you let it get you down, and it kind of takes the wind out of your sails, and that's when you start getting into that non-productive mode. You never want to do that. This whole process is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. You really need to grind this out regardless, and keep moving in a forward direction. If you do that, the chances of you successfully completing your dissertation is extremely high. It's just when you get discouraged and kind of go into park that you're putting yourself in jeopardy at that point of not finishing. Okay, another suggestion that I have, and something that really helped me out when I was going through the dissertation process, is I had a couple of classmates that I became very good friends with as we were going through the doctoral work. And they took the comps the same time I did, submitted their proposals the same time that I did, and roughly finished around the same time that I did. And we worked together. We had study partners. We kind of set bars for each other. There was a level of accountability there that we set for each other. So if you can find someone like that, a classmate, a former classmate, somebody who can be a coach for you and a strong study partner, that's a great thing, because you'll need a motivator. Motivation is a big part of this whole thing. So anything you can do like that, try and identify someone like that if you haven't already. That's important. Also, as I noted, make sure that you keep your committee members apprised at all times about what you're doing. Never just drop off the edge. That's the absolute worst thing you can do, regardless of the circumstances, is just kind of drop off the edge and not keep them apprised of what's going on. As I noted previously, work diligently with both your editor and your methodologist throughout the whole process. There are a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross, so to speak, and that sort of thing with both your editor and methodologist. So keep moving forward and do it with some good quality edited written work and with something that's methodologically sound. And here's something else too. Some days will be a lot better than others, but when you're on a roll, keep going. I look back on my dissertation experience, and the actual writing part of the dissertation over a period of about, I want to say, I wasn't doing the actual writing for a full 2 years, but I probably was doing most of the writing within a period of about 12 months. So you figure that that's 365 days of that this process went on, the main core part of the writing of the dissertation, other than the conclusion and everything, of course, that came after I collected the information and reported on it. Out of that 365 days, there were probably about 30 days that really made the difference when I got on a roll, so to speak, and was able to really make a lot of progress. There were other days when I'd get up and try and write in the morning. I'd try and get up early and write as much as I could. I was teaching at the University of Kentucky at the same time, so my days were fairly full. So I tried to get up very early and do my writing. But there were some days I'd get up and have a cup of coffee at 5 o'clock in the morning, and I'd have a blank pad in front of me. Well, now everybody has a computer. Back then I had those yellow gridded pads, or whatever you want to call them, legal pads. And it was a total waste of time. It just wasn't coming that day. And you'll have days like that. And sometimes when you have days like that, the best thing to do is wait until tomorrow. That does happen. And I know that's kind of an element of procrastination. But at the same time, when you do get on a roll, keep rolling. That's extremely important. And that was the 30 days over a course of a year that was the make or break for me in terms of the whole process. So that's another piece of advice that I can give you. And I will say that none of this is based on any scientific evidence. It's just based on my own experience of going through the dissertation process myself and working with doctoral students over the past 33 years or so now. So kind of being on both sides of things. So I thought that this might be something helpful. I don't know exactly where everyone's at with in terms of the dissertation process, but a lot of it is structure, and a lot of it is really gaining the buy-in of your committee and really being able to keep your feet to the fire but at the same time being realistic about it too. So other questions that individuals have?
Hey, someone jump back in here with you. Um, I don't see any new questions coming in, but I think that one of the things that I thought was very helpful earlier was the support system that you
Mm-hmm.
mentioned, because that was something that I had to learn how to do. And for those of you who haven't met me yet, again, I'm Dr. Brittany Martin. I'm the founder of Doctoral Mom. And actually, I had all three of my children during my doctorate program. So that part is like
Right.
very, very important. And Dr. Palmer really helped me get through that process. He was right. I probably contacted them like once a week or once
Absolutely.
every other week, just to at least share my story or let
Mm-hmm.
them know like what was happening with me. I thought that was important. But I sat in his class with like heating pads, and then towards the end, I was pregnant with my
Mm-hmm.
second son, and I actually defended my dissertation like while I was in labor. I didn't tell him until after they said,
Right.
"Congratulations, Dr.
Exactly.
Martin." But yeah, he knew I was very determined to get
Mm-hmm.
done.
She was a
So
very good student. She, yeah, she was very
yeah,
diligent, very determined.
so I just saw a couple questions actually come in, which are great. My EDD program offers an alternative dissertation. Is that something that you would consider? And I've heard about these before, like alternative dissertations and capstones. Do you have any advice on those?
Yes, I think a lot of it depends on the career path that you want to go down. I'm guessing that the alternative to the dissertation is kind of more of a practitioner type analysis of some kind. And so if you want to go into the traditional academic side of things, okay, if you want to go into that side of things with your career, I would stick with the dissertation because that's got the really strong research orientation. But I'm thinking that the alternative would be more of the practitioner oriented thing. So if you're EDD and you want to be a superintendent, let's say, that may be a good way to go with the capstone. But if you're EDD and you want to get a job at Ohio State as a faculty member, then I would pursue the dissertation.
Do you have any advice with respect to the literature review?
Yes, actually, I do. And I'm not sure in terms of writing it or in terms of collecting information with respect to the literature review. But I would say, like on the front end of things, in trying to pull the information together that's going to be a part of your literature review, it really is getting out there and maybe identifying 30 or 40 different studies that have been done, research articles, that sort of thing, and really trying to narrow things down to maybe 5 or 6 or 7 that focus on your particular topic. Then what you can do at that point, a lot of times, is you can go back to a lot of the studies that they reference in those articles and kind of roll back and get more of a background of it that way in a more focused area, if that makes any sense. So you're kind of working your way back from those articles to see what else is out there. And those probably aren't the only articles that you're going to use, but at the same time, it's a way to get started with the process and really get into a so-called stream of literature.
So Trudy just asked a good question too. Can you recommend a good book to step us through writing a research proposal? One with examples is preferable.
There's well, the one that's widely used is Cresswell. Cresswell, which you're probably familiar with that one, Brittany. You probably have a copy of that around somewhere. But Cresswell is a really good one. The other thing is you can go out there and get a very basic research methods book. It doesn't have to be anything elaborate. You don't have to understand all of the math and formulas behind everything. You don't have to understand every methodology that's in there if it's a qualitative methodology, but you can go into those books and they provide a really good primer. And it's amazing how far you can go with just a basic understanding of some of these things. I think a lot of times people try to, they overwhelm themselves. They go in and they take a book like that and they're like, oh my gosh, I have to know all this. It's like, well, you really don't have to know all of this. You just have to be well versed in what you're going to do and focus on that. And a, a primer can be a good place to start, because I know a lot of those books, the way that they're written, they're kind of, it's kind of an esoteric style for a lot of people to understand. And I don't even pretend to understand everything that's related to all the different research methodologies. There are about 3 to 4 different methodologies that I use for what I do in my analyses. You get me outside of out of that lane on things, and I would be just as lost as any doctoral student trying to do research for the first time. There's just too much out there.
You know, you reminded me of something too, like when I was going through my process. One thing I found helpful, like towards the end, I actually asked recent grads if I could read their dissertations. And that was like incredibly
Yes,
helpful. And
yes,
then, yeah, and
absolutely.
then to go through, I think most schools have databases that
Mm-hmm.
contain like dissertations too. So I would highly recommend that as far as like structure, or if you're just kind of looking for inspiration, or if you're like lost on how to do a particular chapter. I think that's like that'll help you, or at least guide you in some ways too.
Yes, absolutely. And that's something I'll have to add that to my bullet points if I give a presentation like this again. Yes, on the front end of things, getting back to a question we had earlier about when should you start with your dissertation and topic and that sort of thing. One of the best things to do back then at that point, while you're still in coursework, is begin to take a look at some of the dissertations. And there are dissertation abstracts that you can access. And I would even go so far as to say, if you can find some from the institution that you're at, that's a good thing, because it gives you a little bit better idea of kind of the preferred structure of individuals that are going to the same institution that you are. And if you do have a pretty good idea about who your faculty member might be as your chair for the dissertation, you may be able to find some dissertations not only in your topical area, but also that were chaired by the same individual that's going to chair your work. Because what you're looking at that point, you're looking at highly acceptable work. That's all dotted the I's, crossed the T's, and the whole thing, right? So yes, absolutely, great idea.
And we have just one more question before we wrap up. Shelly, I think you're asking this as a joke, but I'm really going to ask this question. Shelly said, is there a dissertation book for dummies? And I had to ask it because there's actually a book. It's actually real. So I
Mhm.
just had to I just had to like say that out loud, because I've actually had some of my students, because I now have the pleasure of being a dissertation chair. So I actually had
Oh,
students
okay.
like yeah, I did my first one. I did my first one last year. It was incredible to say, hey,
Excellent, excellent.
congratulations, doctor. So it was great.
Hmm. That's a good feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was like the best. It was one of the best feelings I ever had to say that to somebody else.
Hmm.
So,
That
but
is, that's really exciting. It's really a great place to be.
yeah, hopefully everyone on the call too. Once you finish your program, you'll have that experience too. It's really incredible,
Yes.
and yeah, that's really a book, Shelley. You might look it up.
Hmm. It is.
We kind of joke about it, but honestly, the best advice is to talk to people. At least that's what got me through. Is like talking to people like Dr. Palmer, my other people on my committee, like students, recent graduates. I mean that stuff is like really helpful. So like Dr. Palmer was saying earlier, just keep in touch with people, because not only are they going to give you advice, like technical advice, like it's just the motivation and the support too that you get from keeping in touch with them. And I think that that was really
Mhm.
helpful because the entire time, again, I was pregnant during the entire like district or entire doctoral process, I should say. I think the first year, it was free and clear, but after that it was like every year I was pregnant. So that motivation and that encouragement, I think, is very important.
Absolutely. Well, you mentioned the dissertation for dummies. The same thing with statistics. If you're doing something with quantitative analysis, especially, that's the kind of thing that was a nice way of pretty much saying, statistics for dummies. If you can find something like that, it's a great resource. It's amazing how much information, good practical information, there is out there like that, and it really puts it into an understandable context. So you're not spending all your time trying to figure out what they're trying to say. It's up front, and you can begin to understand the relevance of that to what you're trying to do. So those are really great resources.
And I think we just reached the top of the hour. Did you want to leave our audience with anything today? You want to?
Well, I enjoyed having the chance to share this information with everyone, and I hope that it's helpful. And I really do think that if you can go into this thing and lay out some solid timelines and be very realistic about your topic and know exactly what you want to do before you start, know exactly where you want to end before you start, and stay close to your committee and on schedule with things, knowing full well that you're going to fall off track once in a while. You can factor that into your timeline up front if you want to. It's kind of like doing your budget at home. Um, every year, for example, my wife and I, we budget so much money for unexpected expenses. We have no idea what those unexpected expenses are going to be, but we know there's always going to be more. Something's going to happen. The car's going to break down. The furnace is going to break down. The roof needs fixed. Who knows what it'll be, but there's always something. And so you want to factor that into your timeline too, because it isn't going to be just a straight linear shot to completion. There will be there will be some things that throw you off here and there, but don't get discouraged. You can do it. There's not one of you, if you're to the stage of in a doctoral program, you're in like the top 2% level of second percentile level of education of everyone in the country. You can do this. You can do this. So you just stay on track, and good luck with everything. And if you ever need any just good old fashioned practical advice, I may not know very much at all about your topic, but I'd be happy to uh, give you any words of encouragement or any other advice. If you want to try and contact me sometime at University of Missouri, that I've got contact. Well, actually, what I'll do is I'll send a follow up email to Brittany that has my full contact information. The reason why I say that is because I'm working almost 100% virtually right now. All of my classes are online this term yet because of the pandemic, and hopefully that'll change by next term. But that's one more thing too. If this pandemic makes it a little harder, a little more of a challenge a lot of times to stay in close contact with people. So what I would suggest you do with your committee is set up scheduled Zoom meetings every week with individuals if you can't be there face to face, and keep that regularity going, even though you don't see folks every day like you normally would. But thanks, and maybe we'll catch up again sometime.
All right, thank you so much. I'll see everyone soon. I hope we will be doing these webinars on a biweekly basis. So I look forward to inviting you guys back. If you have any specific topics that you need us to cover, you can throw those in the chat really quickly. Or if you're on the Doctoral Mom group on Facebook, you can always find us and share it there. I'll type 2 emails in here as well. So if you're ever interested in being featured on our page, on our Facebook or Instagram page, please let me know. We also do member features on our website as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you guys back here soon.
You